biologists. So let's talk about blood today. Blood is an essential part of our immune system. It is composed of cells and cell fragments, and they are suspended in a liquid called plasma. The cells in blood would include red blood cells or erythrocytes, white blood cells or leukocytes, and cell fragments called platelets or thrombocytes. All of these are created through a process called hematopoiesis, which is diagrammed here, although I'm unlikely to ask you any details about that process. Within our blood system, we have red blood cells. The primary function of red blood cells is to transport oxygen to your body, so your body has the oxygen it needs, and to remove carbon dioxide, which is a waste product. It includes neutrophils, which are white blood cells involved in phagocytosis. Neutrophils are typically already around those areas where infection are happening. They're usually some of the first to arrive. So they are involved in the early stages of infection, but they fight a valiant battle and then they die pretty quickly. So they're not found in later stages. They're typically just there at the first stages of infection. Basophils will release histamine, which is important in some of our immune responses, but it also is involved in allergic responses. If you've ever heard of an antihistamine, this is an allergy medicine which would counteract the effects of histamine. That's what antihistamines are working here at this level. Eosinophils are also phagocytic, but what we see mainly is that they're able to secrete substances that kill big stuff. So they can kill parasites and helminths, things that are too big to be phagocytosed. Monocytes are able to perform phagocytosis, although as monocytes they are immature. Through the process of wandering through the body and accumulating at infection, they will mature into what is called macrophages. And it's those macrophages that are really most involved in phagocytosis. Dendritic cells, so you can see that root word dendrite, which means tree, might also make you think of a dendritic, the dendrites in your nervous system, because that's kind of what they look like. They look like trees, or they look like those dendrites. These are not nervous system cells. Dendritic cells are blood cells that are involved in phagocytosis. So all these little extensions make it really good for wrapping around and grabbing pathogens and destroying them. And then natural killer cells. Natural killer cells are a blood cell that help destroy target cells. They're mainly involved in infected cells and cancerous cells. And we're actually going to group natural killer cells in with our discussion of chapter 17 because they work so well along with those, with our T cells, although they are part of our non-specific immune response. There are also T cells and B cells, which are involved in our specific immune response. T cells perform cell-mediated immunity. That means that they get rid of infected cells, our own cells that are infected. B cells, which produce antibodies and can roam through the body and bind and help destroy infectious particles that are outside of cells. And platelets, which I secretly love because platelets were my dissertation topic, but we don't actually get to talk about them much. They perform blood clotting, which is important a little bit when we're talking about infection, but mainly platelets are important to help clot blood to recover from an injury. Differential white cell counts is a way to take a blood sample from a patient and you spin it out, so you centrifuge it, and when you centrifuge it, red blood cells will sink to the bottom, white blood cells will kind of form a nice little white layer, and then you'll have plasma, which has serum proteins and typically platelets surrounded in this upper layer. And you can actually stop and count. If you count out 100 white blood cells, so just take a little sample of this layer, count out 100 white blood cells, about 60 or 70 of them should be neutrophils. You might have one basophil, 2 to 4 eosinophils, 3 to 8 monocytes, and about a quarter of them will be your lymphocytes. So most of your cells there are your neutrophils ready to start fighting right away when an infection happens. Two terms that I don't put particular importance on, but you'll see them called granulocytes and agranulocytes. So both of these have granules, but the granulocytes have granules that stain. So when you look at them under a microscope, you can see the granules, and the agranulocytes, their granules don't stain. Granulocytes would include neutrophils, basophils, and eosinophils. Agranulocytes would include monocytes, dendritic cells, and lymphocytes. Then our lymphatic system is a series of vessels that are associated with our blood system. It includes lymphatic vessels, lymphoid tissue, and red bone marrow, and they contain lymphocytes and phagocytic cells. So instead of just strictly the lymphatic system is strictly carrying immune system around through it. Within the lymphoid system, we have lymph, which is the fluid portion of the lymphatics. Your lymphatic capillaries, I think of a little bit like Hotel California. You can come in, but you can't go out. So it allows fluid to come in. It collects fluid from all around your body. But once it's in the lymphatic capillaries, it can't escape out to your body. It can't get out. So it is going to have to go to a lymph node once it's in that capillary. All the lymphatic capillaries are united into one big system called your lymphatics or lymphoid vessels. Your lymph then is going to travel to lymph nodes, which will filter lymph, be able to see if there is an infection going on or if everything's as normal. So if there is an infection, sometimes you can tell a patient will have enlarged lymph nodes because as that infection is being collected there, your lymphatic cells are going to be, activated and start accumulating and multiplying to try to fight the infection. The thoracic duct, or sometimes it's called the right lymphatic duct, will collect lymph from the body and take it to your subclavian veins, where it becomes blood plasma. It can return to the blood. Spleen is where blood is filtered. The thymus is where T cells mature. Peyer's patches are lymphoid tissue in the small intestine. So these are pretty important. We've talked a lot about how we have lots of important microbes in our large intestine and that it does good stuff in your large intestine. But if they travel to other parts of your body, it could create an opportunistic infection. So Peyer's patches are one way that those microbes in your large intestine, if they start to travel out to your small intestine, those Peyer's patches will be able to identify it and mount an immune response to keep those microbes from traveling through your body. And then tonsils are lymphoid tissue in your throat. So lymphatic capillaries, here's all this fluid from your body being brought in. And these openings are one way. They can come in, but they cannot come out. That means that if there's an infection here, it can't just jump in, travel through, and spread out, right? We don't want to use our lymphatics as a way for an infection to spread. So those one-way openings ensure that fluid comes in, and then it has to go to the lymph nodes for filtration. It has no other option. It's not going to just be a hitchhiker to travel through your body. So now you can compare the structures and functions of monocytes and neutrophils. All of those white blood cells that are in that chart, I can ask you, what is a basophil doing? I can ask you, what cell is releasing histamine? I could say, what is an eosinophil doing? You can describe each of those cells to me. You can describe differential white blood cell counts, and you can describe the function of lymph nodes. You can tell me if I ask you, what is going on in the spleen, or what is going on, and describe what a tonsil is. Okay, I'll see you back in our next lecture video. We're going to continue talking about our second line of defense. We're going to talk on phagocytosis next. See you later. Bye.